Welcome to the Own Your Best Life podcast. I'm May Emson, your host, leadership and mindset coach. Here, we talk all things spiritual, mindset, business, leadership, and wellness for the modern seeker who wants to align their life with purpose and inspiration. We'll cover career changes, stress management, meditation, energy, intuition, and more. Each episode holds spiritual and practical tools to help you live a life of your wildest dreams without getting burnt out along the way. Ready to live a life on your own terms? This is the Own Your Best Life podcast. Welcome, friends, to episode number 151 of the Own Your Best Life podcast. So with all of the uncertainty in the world, SVB just happened, constantly wondering when the next recession will be, if we're ready in it, that feeling of shakiness when you feel that the world is falling apart. Through all of that, we want to feel grounded. And one of the best ways to do that is to deepen your spirituality. When you think about spirituality, what comes to mind? Often it's this feeling of trust and being connected to the universe. We may want this feeling of trust and deep purpose, but we also think that it's so hard to achieve. So in today's podcast, we're going to focus on easy but effective spiritual practices that are very tactical, but will help you build that very feeling of connection that you're looking for. And more than anything, I want to emphasize the importance of cultivating that skill of spirituality. I've been doing this thing called living, as you have for a while now. And I started my spiritual work when I was young. And I've always had questions about why we're here, what life is about. I started meditating when I was 8 on my own. And I've come back to these questions and developed more spiritual practices as time went on. And life showed me that I couldn't rely on the tangible, material things to be my main source of happiness. If it could have been my source of happiness, it would have been. But you'll see, if you haven't seen already, that the material world will fail you at some point or another. Your bank account, your impeccable job, your family, your relationships, your health, and your success will all at some point change, be different than you imagined. You might lose part of it. And for sure, these things will help you feel happier. These things will increase your sense of presence and purpose in the world as well. But at some point, they won't. And then they don't. Not because we shouldn't have money or family or high quality relationships and purposeful work, but because that's not the whole picture. The expectation that this very linear relationship exists between all these material things and your very complete and whole self is flawed. And you've seen through your own experiences in life that you're now seeing past this facade. And you have your mental health, your emotional, and your spiritual health to account for, not just your physical health and your physical body. And this is the same thing. The thing you want most are those feelings of being safe and happy and healthy and certain and a little bit excited about the uncertainty and loved and fulfilled and connected. And all of these things are intangible feelings that you try to achieve through tangible things like money, work, relationships, physical practices, spiritual practices. We don't want to forget this, that the whole point is to come back to the intangible, which is all these feelings that we want, even if you have these very specific material, tangible goals. So spirituality is the valuing of the intangible over the tangible. And at the point that you realize that it's not about the job, you realize that you want to deepen your spirituality. I have gone through periods where I was deeply attached to tangible goals like getting certain grades or getting to certain schools or jobs or making money or physical goals like working out, hitting a certain time, eating differently for my health. I've also found that when I get so deeply attached, at some point, the misery and the unhappiness kicks in. It's all just part of life as well. And so then I need to detach and then find my way back to the why behind these goals. And instead of not having the goals, I'm just not going to wait for the goal to be achieved, to feel the feelings that I so desire. And you're going to find that in your climb to do harder or better in the job or the relationship or with your family or with your health, you're going to experience challenges. That feeling of failure or not seeing something come to fruition fast enough and thinking that you're doing it wrong. And knowing that, hey, I'm learning something new. I'm learning something that I haven't done before. And what you need to learn is what it feels like to connect to a vision and something beyond that tangible goal, the purpose behind why you are doing it. And that will get you back to remembering your commitment. You're not going to have tangible proof that it's working to support you through this period of challenge yet. At some point it comes. At some point the material world matches the internal world. But the material world always comes later. The material benefits, material anything always comes after the vision, comes after the belief. It comes after the seeds that you plant and water with some type of faith and trust in what you're doing. And you won't want to keep watering, you won't want to keep going, you won't want to get through that part if you don't remember why. Right? So you did this in the beginning of your career and your life, and that's what got you here. But you did it out of this feeling of likely having just nothing to lose. Like, I'm just at the beginning, I can't really screw this up too much. And now you're so much more concerned about safety because you have these tangible things like your family or money or relationships to think about, your body. And yet you did do this before. And even though you're doing a new challenge, like figure out how to have a new career or figuring out what you want to do in the future or figuring out the relationship you so desire and that next step for it, you're able to do this too. You just want to connect to your spirituality in the process. You need to build practices that remind you that you're here on this planet for a reason, that you're resilient, that you are skillful, and this very thing that you're doing is going to help you grow. So I'm going to give you tangible things you can do to help connect to a sense of spirit, to a sense of purpose. Many of these things you've done, but you might have forgotten about. Others may be new to you. No matter what, these are all practices I have done or I currently practice that help me be the person who can do a lot of work, have a full calendar, grow my life, my business, my spiritual presence while being a mom, while being a healthy person. All right, so again, not exhaustive. I'm just trying to give you a flavor of some of the things that you can do. So for example, let's start with sensory experiences. There are many sensory experiences that are really helpful, especially if you're someone who is very much in your mind and not in your body. If you feel disconnected from your body, you tend to overthink things. You want to use sensory experiences or somatic practices that can help you reconnect with your humanness, with your body, with the sense of being someone on this planet. Sometimes I call it like earth energy, right? This mind-body connection. When you feel connected to your body, you can also move to the mind, where you begin to notice your thoughts and the effect of your thoughts in your body, which is your emotions, your feelings. You'll start then to feel these energetic highs and these lows and everything in between. And this helps you tune in to how you are responding to the world around you, right? The sense of there is all this tangible stuff going on around me, and how is the intangible internal world being affected by all of the tangible changes and circumstances and situations. You then use that information to help you decide, how do I shift my energy and my experience of life knowing this cause and effect model right now? And that's, I'm going to share with you a few different practices to just, again, this isn't to solve the problem, because there's no problem. It's to help you connect to the why. It's a way for you to get out of your head and back into a connection of the language of, I feel this because I am thinking this, or I notice this because this thing is happening, or the anxiousness that you might notice. So how do we get back to that feeling of grounding and being purposeful? So music is one example. I think many of you recognize and realize the benefits of music. Music is a sound wave, right? When you have sound waves moving through you, you end up calibrating your energy to it. So fast music gets you into that mood, right? Of like inspiration, or certain words that you hear that seem really powerful. A certain melody strikes and you feel the beat and how it is symbolic of where you are in life, right? Slow, fast, all of those things. Another thing is very simple, just lighting a candle is like an initiation. For me, there's almost like a demarcation between one thing and another. So it's an act, right? A physical representation of an intention, or of a moving from one period into the next, or this is how I want to feel. Even smelling the candle, right, engages, again, the senses, reminds you you are here right now in this present moment. Moving your body is another way, which is why exercise, which is why contemplative movements like yoga are also really helpful too, because it isn't just moving, it is moving your body and being in it and noticing it and feeling it. Connecting with your emotions is also another way to have a sensory experience. When we think about senses, we sometimes forget that emotions live inside our bodies. And there are places we feel emotions. I remember when I was young and I would read these like love stories, and something would be so sad, I would feel it in my body. Like I would feel a physical feeling of heartache, of sadness, of just like, oh, that really gets me, like right here. And I could point to it, I could feel that spot in my chest. So we have this happen. But often we skip through it. We don't notice how we're feeling in our body, how heat is building in certain areas, how we might feel that our breathing is changing, or we notice that there is maybe blood moving to or away from certain places, sweating, all of those things, just starting to connect to our body using the language of emotions. And then singing or speaking powerfully is another way to open up that throat and be able to reconnect, for some of you that identify with like the word chakra, but opening up that throat chakra, really about speaking your truth, about saying what you really mean, about being honest, about not abandoning who you are in the process of people pleasing. This is just another way of self-expression. And again, the reason I think about it as a very sensory experience is because often when it's unexpressed, it's almost like it doesn't live outside of our bodies, and our bodies tend to hold then all of those things that we're not saying, that we want to say, right? And these, sometimes singing allows us to, through someone else's words or voices, we hear stories and we sing it and we feel it, and it helps us express that as well. So again, these are sensory experiences. Now I'm going to move to some other ones like everyday experiences. That's what I call them, the mundane. So we can find spirituality in the day-to-day, everyday life. This has been my biggest, I have so many teachers, but one of my biggest teachers is my everyday life experience. In the same way that we know that consistency of habits are what really creates long-term results in our health, we also know that little changes add up. Little spiritual practices here and there add up. And if you're someone who likes to distract yourself with something big, find answers outside of you in some magic solution that you think exists somewhere, I encourage you to try finding spirituality and reconnection in the mundane, in the everyday experiences. The mundane is your life, and you begin to find moments of peace and purpose in your life. And when you do that, the everyday experiences that you have will leave you feeling like your entire day is this carpet ride of magic experience. It's not mundane anymore. It is so special. Every step you take, everything that you do becomes important, meaningful, and just so interesting. And not in a heavy way, but in a really light and joyous way. So one example is like drinking tea. Maybe it's your coffee, maybe it's water, but just slowing down and appreciating it and drinking it and just smelling it is also part of this like everyday thing that maybe you don't even notice. I'm going to take a sip of tea right now, or for me it's cacao. But I noticed that even when I do that, when I did that right now, I have times where I know that I'm not really being present because I don't taste it. Like I don't notice what I'm having. It just seems to just move on by. So doing something that you do often with a different sense of connection to it is a spiritual practice because it brings you back to what am I doing beyond the tangible thing of just drinking tea. Why am I drinking tea? Well, it's good for my body, or I'm drinking cacao because I feel this, kind of energy in cacao. For me, there's like energetic qualities. I feel calm. Also, I love that taste, right? There's so many components. It just brings a certain amount of awareness back into your life. And from that awareness, so many other things can sprout and grow. Washing your hands is another one. I've started really enjoying washing my hands. I know this sounds very trivial, but these are the things when you start to look at more mindfulness practices, they start to have you examine lots of different parts of your life that you can actually maybe take for granted normally, but you stop doing that now. So this idea of washing your hands, I have this nice soap that I really like, and I actually smell it. Like pretty much every time that I wash my hands. Can you imagine like actually smelling your hands? And it just reminds me that I want to appreciate the smell, that there was a reason I picked this scent, this brand, this feeling even. One of them has like some things in it, so it just has a different feel in your hand. It is a hack, but I know you guys love hacks to just increase the quality of your life's experiences. And spirituality really helps you do that because it really brings back the feeling you want to have before you ever attain the thing, which generally are feelings of like peace and stability and joy. And what I'm sharing with you are things to have that now, every day, in the moment, so that you're coming from a place of enough, of being really supported, of being really connected to what is already here and to whatever is in store. Okay, a few more everyday mundane experiences. Making your bed, cooking. For some, it's going to be meditation moments, right? Moments of stillness, the pause between one thing and another. You sitting in your car waiting for your kids, you finishing your breakfast and noticing the sunlight coming through, you sitting in a warm spot or standing and noticing the warmth on your body. All of these things. Prayer is an everyday experience. I know for some of you, it might not be part of your spiritual repertoire, but whether you call it prayer or meditation or just asking for help or talking to the universe, this conversation that you have with something outside of you, this reconnection moment that you have to acknowledging that maybe there is something intangible that you cannot see, that you don't know for sure exists, except that you know, right? Like you know because you know, but it's not like someone has some proof for you to know. That is strengthening that muscle, and that builds the belief. And when you build belief and you build that kind of strength, this is what people turn to when they have big visions in their life for the changes they wish to see. Because the number one thing you want to do is to build belief the entire time that it's possible. Okay, now let's talk about nature experiences. So we went through sensory, everyday experiences, now nature. So when we go outside and we're in nature, we're connecting to something bigger than ourselves. It is an analogy for this connection to spirit, to God, to the universe, when we see ourselves as a piece of this magnificent, bigger world. And nature will be helpful for people that feel like they are unhealthy in their thoughts or maybe in their bodies. What I believe is when you spend more and more time out in nature, it is so energetically powerful that it will recalibrate you. Nature takes out the non-essential from our lives. If you try doing massive long hikes with so much stuff, you realize, I don't want to do this. This is way too heavy, and I start to strip things off. If you are outside and you're wearing all these clothes and you feel the heat on your body, you realize, I need to take this off. Or you realize how cold you are and what you actually need. Maybe not this fancy looking thing, but this thing that actually feels warm, right? So it really breaks us down and reminds us of what is important to be alive on this planet, and sometimes how simple that actually is. So the simplicity is what it reminds us of, and the complexity as well. And when I think of complexity, it is really showing that there's so many infinite possibilities. When you look out in nature, nothing is the same. Nothing is the same. And yet we live our lives as if there is some blueprint that gets copy and pasted from one person to another and we must follow it. When in reality, you look around, no one has the same life as anyone else. We have templates that we're all running off of that feel very similar, but I'm asking you to also throw away maybe some of those templates. That's like a subject for another day, but there really is an infinite number of possibilities for the life that we want to live. The combination of work, play, rest, pleasure, family, all of those things is uniquely going to be different based on who you are and the life and the context that you're living in. So I see nature and I see possibilities. I remind myself that I don't have to recreate the wheel. We can look to nature as that inspiration for what is possible for us to have, be, do, and create when we do things simply by being present, and nature just reacts to what is happening in this world, but purposefully, right? Like nature is just moving constantly, letting go of everything around it, burning everything down, lighting it all up, flooding it, drowning things, creating magnificent possibilities and beautiful places for us to see and grow through and support ourselves with, right? This whole ecosystem. But at the same time, it's also vastly powerful and cuts through all the BS. So I'm just going to start with some of the practices. One is just go outside, like just do it more often. Look outside, go outside, be outside. You will feel that shift. See and be in awe-inspiring places, because I do think that it reminds us of the possibilities in the world, the variations that can be there, and to see that perhaps we don't have to do things one specific way. Contemplating the uncontrollability, I don't know if that's a word, but the lack of control you have over the weather. Like when you sit with that, you realize that there are things outside of your control. And maybe, just maybe, these are things you shouldn't fight and that you should release some energy from when you find yourself complaining or lamenting, versus being curious or thinking about what we want to do next about the weather. All right, another thing to really do that helps you connect with your spirituality is eating foods directly from nature. I remember when we started working with these refugees that were from Bhutan, but they were ethnically Nepalese, and we were supposed to be helping them acclimate and figure out how to navigate grocery stores and shopping for things and just living in the US. I remember that they had so much more connection to food in such a direct way at that time. I remember at that time it was like I never picked cherries before and they had. And I just remember thinking, they know where food comes from. Like, actually, like they've seen it on the tree. They've seen the things grow from the soil. And I think for many of us who have become more in touch with nature or wanting to plant and grow things, that is a spiritual practice, because I think that it reminds us of the simplicity and the creative nature of life. And anything that kind of brings us back to these cycles, these seasons, death, rebirth, birth, right? Just this cycle of things die, things grow, things disease, things change, is a spiritual practice, because it just reminds us of what we are when we're here as humans, is having like a very temporary experience and a transient experience, and a experience that is so connected to the outside world that we forget. And sometimes when we forget, that's actually what causes us the misery or takes an extraordinary amount of energy, because we try to fight those kind of things. Okay, so all of those things I just mentioned, including the planting and the gardening, really connecting to nature. All right, now the next bucket that I like to think about is this community experience. So we are social beings and we live in this world with other people around us. So our relationships can be our greatest source of joy, and they can also be our greatest source of sorrow, right, or grief. And if you feel like your connection with others feel strained, or maybe you have a sense of disillusionment with the world around you, the people around you, you're outgrowing people, you feel maybe you don't have the close and deep relationships that you so desire, then connecting with community and people will be a key part of your spiritual practice, even the people around you. So I often think, for example, this is going to seem a little bit different, but I think of money actually as a part of the community experience, because it's an exchange from one person to another person. I think of work as the same thing, an interpersonal exchange of resources, our time and our energy, right, for something in return and an impact. Focus on community, and then you're going to find yourself with a deeper connection to not just yourself, but other people. and why you're here on this planet, right? So every choice we make about how we spend our time, how we decide to exchange things, shows us what we care about, or at least wakes us up to this idea of that even being a possibility, that we might even have some choice in how we connect to money, how we connect to other people, how we connect to our work. So a couple examples of things you can tangibly do to help you with that intangible spiritual feeling is, number one, giving to others. So giving without expectation is a huge one, right? You think about karma, or this idea that your thoughts and your behaviors and your words have an impact. When you give without expectation, the impact that you create is so much more than the thing you give. It is an example that you set in this world of giving without expectation. It shows you the kind of world you want to live in. It shows you that you have enough. There's just so many benefits to giving that sometimes I think we can go out our way to try to give because we realize, oh my gosh, this amazing experience I get to participate in. I can, no matter how much I have or don't have, there is something I can give. It doesn't have to be monetary. It can be my time. It can be my energy. It can be me listening to someone, whether it's a small child or a grown person or an elderly person. It can be giving a smile in return when someone smiles back at you, or giving it first before someone else does. So many ways when you start to turn the angle of life to what can I give. And I know it sounds so cheesy and it's like, oh, we should just charity and give more and donate. But I want you to deepen that experience for yourself. Like this is something, when I talk about spiritual practice, all of these things you can do without them being spiritual practices. This is about when you do them, you do it with a sense of curiosity, of purpose, of meaning, of hope even, and of detachment. So there's this quality of who you are as you do those things that's even more important than doing it. You can never give anything but your presence. And for some people, that will be life-changing. It will be life-changing for yourself. So again, the energy of what you're doing is more important than what you actually do. So really digging into giving as an example, you can be way more expansive about it in your life and find so many different ways to give to not just humans, but to yourself, to your work, to animals and plants, the world around you, and you'll find so many opportunities, right? And then you'll feel so abundant, so connected. I promise you guys that if this is a real spiritual practice that you actually do consistently, where you think about, you contemplate, you're going to find yourself with so many more of those good, fuzzy feelings that you desire. Okay. Talking to others is another one. We are consciously communicating or unconsciously communicating, but when we talk and we speak, that helps us reconnect to why. Like, why am I having this conversation with this person? What am I needing to say? Why would I say it this way? Why wouldn't I say it this way? So bringing a different level of awareness to our speech even is a spiritual practice, because it reminds you that, and again, I don't do this all the time, but I do it consistently enough that it has changed how I show up, especially even with my kids. Like I do, because they tend to challenge me, right? And push the boundaries, and I tend to, kind of have to question more things because they don't follow the quote unquote rules of society that a lot of people do. So when I talk to them, I actually think, what if this is the last conversation I have with them? And that to me is a very spiritual way to think, because I will think to myself, why am I, like, who am I as I'm talking to, not in such a deep existential way that I just can't, communicate, or I don't know what to say, or it becomes too big, but it just is enough of that kind of redirection that it reminds me that even if I feel like I've gotten carried away, or I don't remember why I'm talking about this, I can come back and say, okay, remember that we're good. We're doing great. You're good. Right? This is not a problem. Right? And here again, let me explain why I might have said something, and really just be present in your intention and try to be very clear. Right? And we're not going to get things perfect. I promise you that. I don't, for sure, especially in speech, which is rife with miscommunication. But I think the intention goes a long, long way, especially if it is active and consistent. Okay. Being with other people in their pain and their joy. So this is important. I think that people want to and know this, because when it comes to end of life, when it comes to a loss, when it comes to a big celebration, people know, okay, I should show up. I should be there, right? So I think this part is natural for humans to want to connect. And I would say honor that desire to connect. And sometimes it comes with FOMO, right? Like not in a FOMO, like, oh, it's been so fun and I'm missing out on this on this thing, but more that I wish I could be with everyone. I wish I could be with you and you and you and you and you. So this is where we do have to cultivate some kind of discernment to say, okay, I would love to be with you and with you, but I can't be in two places at one time. So I think it makes the most sense for me to be here. So the ability for you to choose how you spend your time and who you spend your time with, and to actively participate in that decision making, is a spiritual practice. Even if I remember all the heartache that goes into deciding how much time away from kids should I, quote unquote, should, right? I remember the shoulds. Should I have to be a good parent? Or how much time should I be spending with them to have them have the best outcomes? Like those questions, even if you have those, which I know are very circular and don't actually have an answer, these are the reasons why we choose certain careers. These are the reasons why we choose certain types of family dynamics and geographic locations. So it's not a small question to be asking yourself, how do I want to be with other people? And I want to be with other people. I want to be with them in their pain. I want to be with them in their joy. I want to be present. I want to be physically close maybe to certain people. So that is a spiritual practice to actually commit to this idea of wanting to be with people. And then working with others. We spend so much of our time working, whether you're working in your home, outside of your home, in community, outside of community. There is a constant interaction that we have, and it's a practice of ours to think about how we spend our time. And who you are is more than what you do for a living. So when we can bring our spiritual selves, which really is our intentional and purposeful selves of how we want to show up and who we want to be, into our work, we can actually, sorry, I'm getting like so many spam callers recently. I think my number showed up somewhere. So I have to constantly decline calls, hopefully not real ones. So with that being said, this idea that we want to do work and we want to do work in this world and we want to show up with people, and this is a big part of our lives, that is how we can be spiritual. We can be that person no matter where we are and who we're with. And even if you're not working, you're still a spiritual person. You're still a being that has some intangible qualities to you that go beyond the body, right? That you're in and the job that you have and the role that you play as a mother, a wife, a son, a father, a daughter, a sister, a brother, an uncle, an aunt, all of those things. And if you can shed all of that, which I know is probably like, what? How is that possible? I am constantly in these roles, so hard to drop. That is deepening into a more purposeful sense of who you want to be if you didn't have to be anything. Then you can come back to all your roles and like put on those clothes and then say, okay, I'm here. But you took them off for a minute and you reminded yourself of who you are underneath all of that. And then when you put on the clothes don't wear you. You wear the clothes. I think you get what I mean there. All right. So these are not completely exhaustive, but you can see there are quite a few different ways for you to connect with the feelings of trust, with that feeling of purpose. The more you do this, the more you will build that resilience, right? That we need to live in this world to design your life. You will not be able to shake the uncertainty from you or the discomfort that comes from not knowing everything, of not liking everything, of not having it all figured out. But these practices, I will tell you, have helped me be able to stay grounded, to be able to stay steady. It is something you come back to, even when all of the unexpected occurs. So these are practices, they're not goals, which means that you come back to them again and again and again, the same way you practice anything else. So if you give yourself the space, the time to do life a little bit differently and incorporate these practices, find out what works for you, and not just focus on the tangible action that I'm sharing, you'll find the tangible goals that you have, the material desires and wants, just so much easier to figure out when you have that energetic, intangible, who am I, why am I doing this, aligned. When you know that, when you have answers to that, and you ask yourself those questions. This is now the way I achieve goals, through my spirituality first. You are best positioned to grow, to learn, to deliver, to create when you have a steady foundation and a practice that supports your feelings of safety, of creativity, of love, of flow in your life. And if you use them well, you're going to find yourself just so supported by the world around you. This is the magic sauce that creates a life that you are fulfilled by, right? So try it and let me know how it goes. And this is also why I created the coaching work that I do. I think many of you have heard me talk about it, but the whole point behind it is because the way you're doing things and the way I did things just wasn't working. I mean, it worked well enough to get outstanding results, but I realized I wanted more than that. I know it sounds greedy or maybe like, what? How can you want more than just like great things? I want that feeling that comes with inner peace. I want the freedom of giving it all up and knowing that I could have another type of change in my life. I want the freedom of just knowing that I don't have to compare myself to other people, that I'm on my path and I know what I'm doing. And even if I don't know what I'm doing, I know I will know. And I trust and I believe. And even when it all looks like it's not going to plan, I recommit and I believe and I reground. So that is why I developed all of this work. That is why I come back to it again and again, because the outside material world fails.
And it does. And I wish I could tell everyone, hey, at some point, this isn't going to work anymore. And guess what? Whether I tell them or not, they will figure it out. But if you want to continue to develop your spiritual practices as you do real life things in this world, like grow your career, grow a business, lead teams, figure out what's next for your life, for your career, for your health, this is the kind of work that I'm talking about. It goes hand in hand with real life responsibilities. It is the reason and the way you can actually do it more sustainably. So you can schedule a consultation to learn more about what we would do together at mayemson.com/contact. You would want to learn how you can join this community of like-minded, but open and different and curious seekers. And it is a very powerful hybrid group and private coaching experience for achievers who want to expand their vision of what's possible. And listen, you guys, this is 12 months of support on top of 2 retreats, all of which are calibrated to fine-tune your vision, to fine-tune your practices, and then help you live them in your daily life. So the retreats are kind of like that boot camp. It is the harder, deeper, immersive version. Can you sustain this energy at this quality? And all of the amazing things that come through on retreat, can you sustain that? And then you go back into your daily life. How does it integrate back in so that it becomes who you are? And how do you take that even further and have even more impact when you come back again on your next retreat? And so it's designed with a purpose and a plan that goes beyond what logically makes sense and into the place where you're working subconsciously with your energetic bodies, where you're starting to communicate into your future because you start to work on yourself in such a clear and purposeful way that there's no way for your future to not show up in the material world, to not match all of those internal shifts that you're making. And I've seen it time and time and again, which is why I'm so confident and excited about this work. So reach out at mayemson.com/contact to learn more. And I will also offer for you that you have the ability to listen in to the replay I just released of a masterclass called Figuring Out What's Next. So go to the link in the show notes to get access to that masterclass. You will learn the 3 phases of where you're at in your career and your life. And if you are at a certain place, what you want to be focused on so that you can make progress, you can deepen the growth that you're having, and you can figure out what is next for you. All right, my friends, that is it for this week. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will talk to you next time.
Thanks so much for joining us this week on Own Your Best Life. Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts so that you'll never miss a show. And while you're at it, can you please rate and review on iTunes? I would so appreciate it. Share it with a friend, take a screenshot of it, and tag at @MayEmson. This helps continue to get the word out. For more show notes and resources, check out www.mayemson.com. It'll have all the links to everything you heard here today. Thanks so much for listening. It's time to own your best life.